Welcome back to the Royal Road Report, and thank you for joining me again. Here I give you a rundown on a few stories I've noticed recently, so you can get an idea for what's out there and a more thorough first impression than just seeing one more cover and title on a long list. Today's format will be a little different from last time. Content creation is always a learning process, and even just one episode in, I've realized a few things I want to do differently going forward. First, I'm reducing the number of stories compared to last time. I felt 8 was far too much to do repeatedly unless a story catches my eye for a particular reason. Second, I'm changing the note on prose quality. Instead of a short, repetitive comment on the prose of each story, I'll add a note on screen with my impression. The 5 options will be bad, some errors, fine, good, and excellent. You can expect most stories to just be rated fine. This is technically a score out of 5, which I said I wanted to avoid, but hopefully using words instead of numbers will avoid people thinking anything less than 4 is garbage. And finally, instead of highlighting stories specifically from either the Rising Stars or Popular This Week list, I'll instead pick them from wherever I want to. Having said that, today's 4 are all from Rising Stars. Before we get to that though, we have some other Royal Road news to talk about. The Royal Road Writathon is on, and at this point passed its first milestone. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, the Writathon is a challenge for authors to write a total of 55,555 words across a period of 5 weeks. Anyone who succeeds wins a month of author premium and an achievement on Royal Road. At the time of recording, Royal Road lists a massive 1,221 participants, which is quite the number. I wish the best of luck to all of them. The challenge is not easy. After the final deadline on the 6th of December, I'll definitely be making an episode to take a look at some of the winners. For anyone interested in participating, you don't have to be there from the start, so you haven't missed your chance. As long as you submit your story and get the words written before the deadline, it counts. You could write the whole thing on the final day, if such a thing is even possible. I'll be looking forward to browsing the winners list. Now moving on to today's fictions. Hounds of Orion by D.M. Rook. Hounds of Orion is a gritty sci-fi mech combat story. Set in the year 2848, where huge mechs called arms rule the battlefield, the story follows a veteran mercenary and his new charge, a prince. We're shown what the story is all about immediately in the first chapter, with a melee mech duel that's all hard impacts and smashing each other into paste, rather than aerial maneuvers and fine gunplay, so you know what style of mecha you're getting into. In the first few chapters, you were also introduced to both of our main characters. Logan, a mercenary mech pilot, and Cameron Pellin, the, according to the synopsis, soon-to-be exiled Prince of Planet Ketris. If you get a certain feeling from reading the synopsis on what style of characterization to expect, the story is exactly that. Logan presents everything you would expect out of an action movie style hollowed out by war mercenary, complete with internal monologue about no longer feeling for his enemies. And Cameron presents the very picture of the drunken playboy prince archetype, with his first appearance being waking up in a dingy bar after a night partying. A few chapters in, it's too early to say much about their personalities, but with the synopsis you can definitely see what it's setting up for. It's light on the science side of sci-fi, as mechs tend to be by necessity, and what I've seen of the world building so far suggests very soft sci-fi. Given that the author's What to Expect list includes a progression system and lit RPG elements, you can expect a story far more focused on grabbing new gear and killing someone with it, rather than perfecting a mech's loadout or fussing with the logistics of interstellar war. Vibes-wise, this is more Battletech than Lancer. I recommend this one for people who want some mech combat in an action movie tough guy style. Think Wolverine from X-Men. The 12 Apocalypses by A.T. Valentine. In The 12 Apocalypses, we follow the story of Hayden, a man who up until recently was someone else, though he doesn't remember who. Hayden wakes up with no memories and his soul being devoured. To escape, he accepts a strange call and finds himself possessing the body of a human soldier that's just joined the armies of hell. Placed under demon officers who couldn't care less about him or the other human fodder, he has little choice but to charge forward and prove his worth. The story starts pretty much exactly with what its blurb promises. We meet Hayden, get some hints of world building, and then he's immediately sent into combat. Through a combination of his own willpower and hints of memories from the body's original owner, he does pretty well for himself, unfortunately for the civilians he encounters. While he certainly feels bad for wanton slaughter, he pushes past pretty quickly, so in the first few chapters it's far too early to tell if he'll end up the sort that revels in the slaughter, or if he'll turn against his demonic overlords at the first opportunity. Of course, for a progression fantasy protagonist, both is always an option. Hayden shows himself to be a fairly strategic fighter with a very pragmatic personality, and the story does well to show his emotional reactions, which makes it more satisfying when he pulls himself together. Overall, the whole thing very much earns its dark fantasy tag. It's also tagged Lit RPG, however these elements make no appearance in the first few chapters, so I can't comment on what to expect there. I recommend this one for people looking for some good quality fantasy brutality and scrappy clever fights. Slime Sweets and Dungeon Treats by Pandora Pierce. Like many cozy lit RPGs, Slime Sweets starts with our protagonist rejecting the easy path of violence. Hazel wakes up with missing memories in a starter area just before a mysterious dungeon. To return to wherever she came from, she's asked to pick a weapon and get started leveling up by killing monsters. She makes a different choice instead and sets out on an unknown path. The dungeon has 100 floors to get through, and we're told that others like Hazel are trapped there unless they can clear all of them. So this is very much the kind of lit RPG where the system, its purpose, and its abilities take a very leading role. Something that is quickly confirmed as the system can communicate and messes with Hazel a little bit. While Hazel's missing memories and the dungeon's mercurial behavior definitely set up a mystery to be solved, it looks like that adventure will be secondary to taming slimes and enjoying good food. Though the story is not without conflict, as it quickly becomes apparent that not everyone shares the opinion that making friends is better than fighting. Essentially, the story very much delivers what it says on the tin. There are slimes, there are sweets, and we're in a dungeon and it's a treat. Cozy stories are a pretty specific taste, and I recommend this one to people who enjoy that genre of story. Fantasy Arms Dealer by Nihilia. In this lit RPG story, our protagonist, a former CEO and scammer, finds himself in another world after he ends his life to escape a prison sentence. Now reborn as the fantastically named William, or rather Will Swindle, he quickly sets out to pick up where he left off, making himself richer no matter what it takes. Will is an unrepentant scoundrel with little care for others and admits to himself that his previous actions were not because he needed the money or wanted to do anything with it, but simply to see if he could. And as much as I would condemn him in real life, I do enjoy a main character who is in it for the love of the game. The world we're shown in the first few chapters is one that seems fairly integrated with its lit RPG. We don't see the details of how the system functions, since it unlocks when a child turns 18 and Will wakes up just before then, but a few bits of world building suggest that the author has put some thoughts into how a system might change things, which is always good to see. Besides the greed and selfishness central to Will's character, he seems to be a reasonable person. His immediate concerns are practical, and he doesn't veer off into moustache-twirling chaos like some evil main characters are prone to. What I've read so far looks like good setup for a progression lit RPG where the grind is raising our bank balance instead of our XP value. I recommend this one to people who like evil main characters and fantasy politics from a merchant's perspective. And that's our handful of stories for this episode. Some interesting stuff here, and ones that I might not have checked out if I were just browsing like usual. These aren't of course the only stories I've had a look at recently, just the ones I decided to include in this video. There's a lot of content out there, and I hope you found something worth checking out. And if you're still looking for more, I do have some recommendations to throw out. I feel like I should clarify, I'm not just picking the stories that I like. I know I said last time that I'm not here to give my opinions since I'm not doing reviews, but what I meant is I won't only highlight stories that I'm personally reading. None of today's 4 have made it onto my follow list, but I still felt like they're worth showing to other people in case they might suit your taste. My recommendations, however, are of course stories that I like. And one story I've been liking recently is Dark Magical Girl by LaoLao20. This is a fanfiction of Magical Girl Gunslinger by Mikasano, and it's pretty good. It takes the original idea of how magical girls work in that universe, and then runs it in a different direction. The prose is a little rough, but the story is coherent and I found the characters fairly fun. The story centers on Yuri Shirayuki, who, after endangering herself to save others, becomes a magical girl, and sets out to help others while struggling with her duties to her family. So if you're waiting on more chapters from Mikasano, then give this a read, because it's definitely worth your time. And if you're interested in more magical girl stories, why not try out Task Force Sparkle? Written by yours truly Aurea Opus, with the first chapter having gone up just a few days ago. Task Force Sparkle centers on Rose Mason, a woman living on an Earth that half a century earlier made contact with other worlds full of magic. Things have calmed down quickly since then, but unknown to most, there is more than magic out there. Eldritch entities and strange anomalies that neither technology nor magic can explain. When Rose gets caught up in an anomalous event, she's given the chance to become a magical girl and safeguard humanity from every sort of threat. If you'd like to see magical girls played mostly straight in an SCP-like horror setting, then come check it out.